The year is 2023, and somehow we're talking about Babylon 5. Babylon 5 animated news, Babylon 5 an old ass episode for some reason, but that's not all we're talking about. We're also covering Disney Plus and Hulu news today on Breaking Geek Radio.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Geek Radio, the premier flagship and international podcast of LRM Online and the Genreverse Podcast Network. And I take exception to that intro because what the fuck else would you want to talk about? What else? What else is going on? What do you want to talk about? Give me a suggestion.
Good point. All right, you know what? You're right. You know, it's funny. Earlier this week, I was thinking about the things that we could have talked about, and no, you're right. This is not the week to talk about it. I was thinking next week would be the time, but next week we have lots of stuff to cover. So I guess there's
next week. Got lots of stuff. Next week, are you going to be talking about family?
Yeah. I guess that's next week, isn't it?
What do you mean? I guess. No, we're talking about Fast and Furious. I want to hear your shit. And with with the rate that we've been going so far, it's just going to be you and me talking about it anyway, which is going to be fine.
That's fair.
It's going to be Nick and Danny fucking hating on it.
Yeah. Oh, so, we know anyway, Danny's going to hate on it, period. And then Nick is just
going to hate on it.
He
has been converted to the dark side by Danny. So there's going to be nothing but fast and hating.
So Nick.
That's right.
For those who don't know, Nick Dahl, our glorious compatriot, has been revisiting the Fast and Furious franchise, and he got to Fast 5 and is like, I remember this being good. This sucks. I hate everything. This is the worst franchise since, I don't know, salami on potato, whatever the hell.
And then started talking about how
great.
John Wick was better, Mission Impossible was better. But he was saying that it was because the plots were better. It's like, well, they all have the same unforgettable plots.
No, freaking, I don't care what he says. Mission Impossible's plot, impenetrable. I don't understand what the hell is going on in those movies ever, at all. I just know, Tom Cruise, are you in danger? Should I be worried for you? Are you doing fun things? And that's it.
Are you running?
It's literally, exactly. Are you running? What's happening here? And John Wick is simpler. I could follow John Wick, but it's basically just kind of like, ooh, eye candy the entire time. We'll see him take out some headshots.
Shooty, bang, bang.
Yep. But we're not talking about shooty, bang, bang today.
I know. We're gonna slow it down. We're gonna take it back to a more diplomatic time. We're gonna review Babylon 5: The Gathering, which is the pilot episode to Babylon 5: The series. What I found interesting about this was the fact that this was a pilot that actually premiered 1 year prior to the show actually airing, which I know I watched it all. I don't remember that, but that's kind of a weird thing. And what that actually means is that for this particular movie, a lot of things changed moving from this pilot episode, this 90-minute pilot, to the actual show itself. There were lots of changes.
And the actual pilot, right? Is there another pilot that replaces it? Is there a shorter pilot, or does it just go straight to episode 2? This is it. Okay.
This is it, baby.
So episode 1 is episode 2.
Episode 1.
It's kind of like what Battlestar Galactica kind of did, where they had that whole mini-series first, and then right after, it was just like, hey, you should have seen this.
Got it.
But you know what? I would disagree with that. And I will tell you why as we review it. Who wants to go first? You want me to go first, or you want to go first, Sam?
I'll go first. Because I have.
You go first.
I don't have a history, so to speak. I was first exposed to Babylon 5 in 2010, late 2010, when I was living in Glendale.
What were you doing?
Yeah. I was a kid of the 90s, dude. I was like running around in diapers when this was airing. I don't even remember. Well, it's probably not true. When does this shit air? Babylon
93, 94?
93. Yeah, so I was 5 when this started. Ain't no 5-year-old jammer not going to fucking sit still for this diplomatic show where a pilot or a captain of a ship, I feel like everything he says is a double entendre just by the way he talks or the way he facializes his features. But anyways, I remember watching this, and I think.
Wait, did you say double entendre and then talk about how someone facialized?
I did. That was part of the That was part of the bit. Anyway.
That was intentional? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
That's fine.
Stepping on your bits.
Stepping on my bits, which is another thing. Okay. So I was living in Glendale at the time, and my roommate, I would come home from work and he'd be watching Babylon 5. And I remember specifically what bothered me about it. And it didn't apply as much to this pilot, but maybe it's different, or maybe I just perceive it differently or remember it differently. I remember conversations, they're sitting at some bar or whatever, and it's that guy with the headdress with that accent I can't quite place.
Londo?
I don't know names, dude. So yes or no, is this? Oh, I'm talking like this. That guy. Him and another guy talking, they're being background people, and literally there being no background sound at all.
I remember this. I remember you making this complaint before. When were we talking about Babylon 5? Like, this is a months old discussion.
No, this is a years old discussion. That.
No, between you and I? Really? Years old?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is probably at least a couple Babylon years 5? Old. It could have been a myriad of situations, but we do have a tendency to get off topic. So that's probably, in one of those situations.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember those conversations and thinking, oh my God, this looks so boring. I never want to watch this. And to be fair, people in spaceships, it's not something I grew up with, not something that really resonates with me on a core level. So going into this, I was actually really eager to revisit. I'm like, it's been about 13 years since I've seen this. I've grown up. Is this going to be something that I'm intrigued with? And I feel like this kind of fell into two categories for me. It was better than it was back then. But it also kind of fell for me into sort of like the network TV pilot problem, where it's just kind of slow, kind of is hard for me to latch onto, kind of hard for me to follow because either my attention is wandering, or B, maybe because it's just, I don't quite follow these types of storylines as easily. So it takes me a few episodes to get my mind into it. So I didn't quite have enough time, but I still found it fairly intriguing, fairly entertaining. I was surprised at how diverse the cast kind of was, to be perfectly honest, as I was watching this.
Oh, really?
Freaking early 90s. In the early 90s, it's crazy. I mean, for the early 90s, I didn't expect that. I expected, what you'd expect in the early 90s.
Oh my God, look at these people of color and women.
Yeah, I didn't expect it from Hollywood in the 90s. Sue me.
Okay.
Anyways.
Well, it'll be funny as we discuss this cast going forward. How you feel about
we'll
that
see how I feel about that in 5 seconds. Overall, I'm not even sure I could talk about the plot that much, because I feel like I was just trying to cling on to any little thing I have. Like, I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was, I was intrigued to continue watching. And as I was going through it, I was like, okay, I guess I could keep watching this. And Kirsten's like, oh, I definitely want to keep watching. I'm like, all right, cool.
Really?
I mean, Kirsten loves this shit. I mentioned that before. She loves the Star Trek, the original series, specifically the original series. I don't think she really has much exposure to any of the other stuff. So, and we love the Orville and all that. So it's like, she loves it way more than I do. I think it's really good, but she loves it. So I think this is another thing down her alley. But now I would come to a question, and you can answer it later. Do I follow this, or do I try to jump onto one of the Star Trek series on Paramount?
Why?
Why what?
So I don't think I understand the question.
If I have to pick one to pursue right now to pursue one at a time.
Watch all of Strange New Worlds.
Okay. Good to know.
That's the easy answer.
But anyways, so let's talk about your thoughts about this original pilot and original pilot. What the hell's wrong with me? But this pilot for Babylon 5 and why you wanted us to talk about it. Well, that'll be a nice.
So I want to talk about it. I felt like it was a good time to discuss it, right? We've heard lots of rumblings about this reboot series that JMS, J. Michael Straczynski, is doing with the CW. Is it on? Is it off? It's hard to know. I think right now it's in a hold status based on the writer's strike and a couple of other things. So that part really sucks. But then we got really good news that Danny and I got a chance to discuss last week, which we're going to talk about a little later in the show. There is an animated movie coming out. And at the time that Danny and I discussed it, we didn't really understand the scope of what this was going to be. But we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of go back and revisit this. Just do a retro review of like the beginning of this and why there are such diehard fans of this series, right? There are usually not a lot of shows, and certainly back then in 1993, there weren't space operas that, that had nothing to do with Star Trek that lasted. And so to have this one not only start, but finish its entire run with a single vision was a huge deal. And so that's why I thought it was important and fun to have a conversation about. My thoughts going back on it. So I was not 5 years old. I think I was 11. I was 10 or 11 when this came out. And
I'll tell you what, 11-year-old Jammer wouldn't have stood for this shit either. 11-year-old Jammer was too busy watching Dragon Ball Z to wait around for people talking and nothing happened.
You got to diversify your bonds.
I'm letting you know. My attention span is the culprit here.
Listen, I like both. I watched both. Everything had a place and a time, and there was something about this. And you know what? I can tell you exactly what it was. When I was a kid, my mom and I talked about politics all the time, and that's all this is, right? So this is just a ton of politics plus all the aliens. So you're telling me I get to sit here and listen to politics, but also get to see all of the aliens and all of the space battles and all this other stuff. Like, I'm in. And so this just worked for me on multiple levels.
Yeah.
But going
I definitely
back
was not
to
talking politics with my mom at age 11.
It was really weird. I realized how strange that was going back in time. How strange that was. But
I got you back on that, Jonesy. It's not that strange, man. It's not that strange.
Thank you.
It's why Battlestar was so good. Like the reimagining, like just mainline that shit.
All politics. Not all, but like a ton of politics and space battles.
I like politics in my stories. I just didn't when I was 11 or 5. So that's where I'm coming from.
I did. So going back to watch this, it's weird because I anticipated that it would be rough. I just didn't remember how rough. And as the CGI,
it's got that 90s,
was rough.
90s network sheen.
It is 90s AF. And I remembered it, and maybe I just blocked it out. I don't know. But what I do recall that carry through this from this onward were the strong performances of Peter Jurassic as Lando Malari, who I think that's what you're referring to when you said the headdress. So he's kind of bald, but he has like this hair that flares out in the back. And then Andreas Katsalas as Jakar. Those two characters not only carried...
Is that
Jakar was the guy who said he was talking to the telepath, and he said, hey, we don't have any telepaths in our society, so it'd be really great if we could do a cross pollination of our genetics. We could take embryos, we could do that, but the direct method is far more efficient. I just don't know what your pleasure threshold is. Like, I fucking love that scene. But also, like, his relationship with Lando Malari carried this I loved it. It's a fantastic relationship. So it was fun getting to see the kind of genesis of it here, and seeing Peter Jurassic's just fantastic acting chops as he talks about the fall, not the fall, just kind of like the decadence of the Centauri Republic and how it's kind of fallen, at least in his eyes. And it is hard to watch this episode and not think about what's coming. And what's coming is so good that it was easy for me to give a lot of the missteps in this. But I
don't consider them missteps. I consider them just, they were part of the time. The budget was small. The CGI was at its beginning state. It looks like that of the Cartoon Network show Reboot, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, I do.
And also it has that network aspect where, and this is like, there's a moment where I was like, oh, this feels so 90s when, right before they cut to a commercial break, the music goes done and then quickly fades out for the commercial break. And I'm just like, oh, I hate that. I remember hating this so much when watching TV.
So when I say missteps, there are just like these really strange writing things that happen. Like there's a scene where where the ambassador Kosh is on the floor and they're like, call security. It's like the security chief is standing right in front of you. Right? Like there are weird moments like that happen. There's a moment where the doctor is talking about how he saw the face of Kosh and he's like looking at the camera instead of talking to the person that asked the question. So like a couple of weird things like that. Plus, like, Kyle would, if he had rewatched this episode, would see like these really weird squad tactics that they're doing where they're like, yeah, don't send all of security to go after this guy. It's just going to be the two of us. We're going to go do this. We're going to go get this person.
They're pulling a Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, and they're doing this weird walk down the hall, and I'm like, this is strange. But
it's one of those things where it's like no research was ever done in these shows, and people just like living in a bubble. They're like, hey, TV show, this is good enough. We'll just go. I mean,
it's
all
about
80% solution.
Expediency. Is it as bad as military stuff Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi?
That didn't bother me at all. So what I think is weird about this, also you have like weird narrative stuff where they're doing things for just our benefit, right? Like there's a telepath who's like, hey, what happened to the other stations? And he's like, well, this station did this and this station did this. Like, that's like me having to explain to somebody 9/11, right? These trillion-dollar stations were either sabotaged or somehow failed or just fucking vanished. And
I thought that was a funny thing, though. I thought that was cool mythology, though. I actually was intrigued. I was like, ooh, I want to hear what happened to Babylon 4.
It's cool mythology, but what I'm saying is like the delivery method, the way that it happens is weird. So when I talk about missteps, like this is kind of like the spectrum of things that I'm talking about. And again, I think part of that is what you already described. It's part and parcel to just that 90s fucking sheen.
Yeah. I just, as false, when that scene happened, I remember thinking like, wouldn't that be funny if he turned away? She's like, I was talking about the Babylon part. I don't care about the 5. Just why is it called Babylon? I don't understand that part of it.
So
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, so I mean, basically, what I could see the appeal here as someone who maybe this just doesn't strike me yet. I'm interested to give it more time because these types of shows, it takes me, frankly, a season at least to get into for these types of shows. So I'll go back and I'll give it a shot. Maybe after Strange New Worlds, who knows? Maybe before Strange New Worlds. But yeah, I could see the appeal for other. It's one of those things where like I'm happy you love it. I'm happy there are people who love it. Just innately, it is not for me, but I'm still going to give it a shot because I understand the appeal. So it falls squarely into that category for me.
Yeah. As someone who knows where the story is going, I'm kind of excited to have somebody else watch it because the appeal, I think, of this show overall, at least to me, is having that singular vision throughout the course of this show, because a 5-year plan for a show was abnormal back then.
Yeah.
And JMS had this entire thing plotted out, knew how it was going to go, had a very strong vision for how he wanted to go. And that carries throughout the entire series to the point where he had like trap doors for characters, right? Like he knew so much of what he wanted to do with the show that if something happened with an actor or something like that, he would know how that person was going to be replaced in the story. And so that's like the level of detail and the characterizations that were happening going on. And it was a lot of fun to watch these characters. And to me, more than the space battles, it was just a very, very good character driven show.
That's fair. I mean, hopefully, I'm really hoping, at this point, having seen the CG, that we aren't reliant on the action of the space battles in order to be intrigued by this show.
It gets better.
I'm sure. I'm sure you think it does. I don't know if it really does. We'll see.
So here's the thing. It does get better. I know that because the way it's weird, the way this episode is positioned. We watched this on Tubi, just for full disclosure. The episode is listed as a bonus episode. Remastered. And I think the other reason, and so Nick asked a question on Discord, like, why is it listed as a bonus episode? I think because there was a TNT reissued version of this pilot episode, and I think that's part of the reason why. Now, wouldn't it have just been easier to still call it the pilot and have it be at the beginning? Yeah, sure. The point of what I'm saying is, because it's listed as a bonus at the end of the first season, the first episode of season 2 started playing immediately thereafter. And so there's like this marked difference between what you're seeing as CGI between like the pilot episode and season 2. Like the sets are different, the uniforms are like everything is so much better between the pilot episode and season 2.
Okay. Well, I know that we're back in 2023, and news arrived, as you mentioned, that we are getting an animated movie from the franchise. So I guess this is a perfect time to transition into that piece of news, specifically the voice cast, since you know all the character names and the voice cast, and I don't know any of it. Tell us why we should be excited about this, or why we should be concerned or disappointed.
Well, I think the first reason to be excited is the fact that they were able to get all of the cast who is still alive back on the show. I'm sorry, back for the feature. And so that will add that level of authenticity to it. So you've got Commander Ivanova coming back. You've got I don't know if he's going to be President Sheridan. Oh, man, I'm doing spoilers. I don't know. Sheridan. I don't know where he's going to be in his timeline.
Is that the captain with the double entendres?
No. So that person changes out in season 2.
Oh, good, because I didn't like him in the pilot. He was weird and creepy.
So he is there all throughout season 1, and then, if I'm recalling this correctly, he either had health issues or an alcohol issue. Yeah, it was either a health issue or an alcohol issue, and he got swapped out in season 2 for another guy.
Another actor or another character?
Another actor. I'm sorry, another actor and character. So remember we talked about the trap doors?
Yes.
This was one. And so crap, his name just jumped out of my head. The captain from the first episode, I don't want to spoil it. They swap characters for reasons.
Okay.
And so the voice cast, getting to see all of the living folks come back is great. What is sad is there are so many dead actors from the season, and you weren't on the show. I was talking to Kyle and Danny about it, looking at season, I think 4, the DVD cover, like 4 out of 5 of the actors are dead. And they recast all of those people. And so while it's sad that all those folks are dead, getting to see the fact that they recast all of those people kind of opens the aperture and scope of what this story could be. And we also got more plot details about what it's going to be. And it just sounds like it's going to be like completely nuts. It sounds like Sheridan is like falling through time and space, almost like Quantum Leap style, to try to get back to where he's supposed to be in either the timeline or the universe that he's supposed to be in. And as that happens, he's going to encounter like all of these people. And at least one of the people is exciting to me because and part of it is I can't tell who it is. So there's a David Sheridan that's been cast. Now, his father was David Sheridan, and he was an ambassador. I don't think it's him. I think it's his son. And his son would be a really interesting character because we never saw him in live action. And so getting to see who this character is going to be in the animated series, I'm sorry, God, messing up my words. In the animated feature could be fun. And I saw the actor that they got to play. He seems to be a younger person, which further makes me think that it's not supposed to be his father. So I'm looking forward to it just for all of those reasons. And I'm really excited to see what animation style they choose. Looking at some of the Warner animated stuff. Like, first of all, I generally like Warner animated stuff. I haven't liked some of the recent things that they're doing. Like, I'm thinking of the most recent Superman. I wasn't a fan of that. But they have had some really good animation to pull from. And the shot that they pulled of the station itself looked fantastic. So I'm hoping it's in line with that.
I gotta kind of looking at the art that is available. And sorry, my camera's all blurry. Anyways, I think it's got a chance to look like the Vox Machina and Arcane style, that like painted CGI.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling that it's kind of gonna look like that. I don't know for sure because only the one image.
That'd be cool.
But that's what I get a kind of feel from what I'm looking at, if that makes sense.
So you and I specifically talked about the Arcane art style. Like, I think you asked me what did I want, and I said that would be a fun one. I think just because it would be so different. I would love to see how they would do space battles and things like that using that.
I'm wondering how the like, if we're gonna get something, if it's gonna feel like what you remember as Babylon 5, because they had budgetary restrictions, because it was live action budgetary restrictions on a TV network. They probably had to skew the style to be heavily dialogue heavy, right? To be dialogue heavy and politic heavy, as you said. I wonder, decades later, switching to animated medium, switching to the film medium, if that's going to change it style so that it doesn't feel as much like Babylon 5. Is that a concern that you have about it?
No, mostly because it's the same creator behind it. If this was someone different, then yeah, I could see that as being a concern. I get the impression that JMS is so, for lack of a better term, possessive and protective of this property that he wouldn't want to do something that would compromise his vision for what this would be. And I remember him talking about a quote. He said words to the effect of, like, to Warner Brothers, like, let me know when you're actually serious about doing something with this property. And he just wasn't interested in doing something that was less than, or would treat this property with less respect than he thought it deserved.
Yep. That makes sense. Okay. I mean, I guess in my head, I'm thinking that I could see that, but I could also see him being like, hey, this is an animated movie. It's a chance for me to flex my writing muscles in another direction. It could still be great, but it could be different. Maybe from what you know as Babylon 5 to be. Are you open to that potential? Or would you be disappointed if it's still good, but isn't necessarily what you know Babylon 5 to be?
I mean, I think you and I've had discussions about this before. Like, if it's still good, it's still good. And I know that is a subjective thing. Still good to me is, do the characters still feel like the characters? Is it an interesting plot? And what you reminded me of just now was, and I'm going to eat my own words. So he was involved in The Lost Tales, which was something that came out after all of the shows had come out, and it was like these little stories about Babylon 5, and it was like, this is fine. It wasn't particularly good, and while it wasn't bad, it wasn't wholly satisfying either. And so I think that would be more disappointing to me than this feeling different, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I want to make sure before we close out on this, I know for you sent a long article on Discord that you wanted to give context, or was that just for us, or was that something you wanted to incorporate into your thoughts for the whole Babylon 5
So that was
discussion?
really for you all, so you could understand. There was a discussion he was having as someone was having a discussion about The Gathering about 11 years ago. And he was basically just giving context to the episode itself, where he freely admitted, he was like, hey, this isn't like my best stuff, but I do stand by what's in here. And what it really showed was the concept of the show, what the show could be. And I think he specifically talked about the fact that Peter Jurassic elevated the work that was portrayed on screen, and then he just talked about some of the at least one plot point that is important throughout the course of the show, where he talked about there's a hole in your mind when he's talking to Jeffrey Sinclair at the end. For the most part, a lot of what happens throughout the course of the pilot is not particularly important. It gives you a flavor for what the show is going to be. It sets up a lot of the universe, but you get that throughout the course of the first season. That last line is a plot point that carries throughout. Everything else that you get throughout the course of the series, throughout the course of this that feature film, The Gathering, you get all of that stuff throughout the course of the first season. So you don't really miss anything by not seeing it.
That's actually, it almost makes me happy they kind of got rid of it, because I feel like if you're able to effectively sprinkle those aspects throughout a whole season and make it as effective rather than just sort of front load it at the beginning, that's probably better storytelling. I'm just basing this on nothing other than that. Cool. Well, enough talk about network TV. I know we are living in the age of streaming, and right now one of the big dogs is Disney Plus and their Hulu streaming platforms. And we got some news regarding just Disney as a whole, Disney and Hulu. So take it away, Jonesy. What's happening in the world of Disney streaming?
Wait, first off, I want to ask, is that like a Diamond Dogs Ruff? Is that what, like a Ted Lasso thing?
Yes. Let's just say yes, because we watched that episode where what's his name? Nate tried to create his own Diamond Dogs and failed miserably. I don't know if you saw that spoiler.
I did.
Yeah.
What did he call them? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I just remember it was a failed experiment, and he should be ashamed for trying. Though I will say I love what they're doing with Nate so far in this season, and how they're not portraying him as a complete piece of shit like I expected them to. Like, he's still him. Like, that's really great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So what's going on in the world of
TV Plus?
Enough about Apple TV Plus. We're talking about the other streaming service. So Disney's doing a couple of things right now. They are moving towards merging Disney Plus and Hulu for US subscribers. As Cam talked about on the Discord chat, this is the thing that already exists for international users. I've experienced it here in Korea, where if you turn on Disney Plus, you're getting a ton of Hulu content in there. Like, I could have watched Prey, for instance, which was a Hulu original movie. I can watch that on Disney Plus. But the company is moving towards integrating those services. And one of the things that they say is that it's going to make it easier or better for advertisers. I'm not sure why don't I think that's true, but yeah, they're going to be, the way McCarthy said it, Christine McCarthy, who's the CFO, said, we're in the process of reviewing the content on our services to align with the strategic changes in our approach to content curation. As a result, we will be removing certain content from our streaming platforms, and so they're going to put some of the other stuff on Hulu. Now, I'm sorry, on Disney Plus. Now, that also comes in conjunction with news for the fact that Disney Plus has lost a significant number of subscribers in this last quarter. And so I don't think that this is a response to that, but it sounds like the streamer is hurting and adding a lot of this general content to the Disney Plus app could only help rather than hurt. It's picture? I feel like that does.
Interesting age of streaming we're living in now that kind of the table has been set. We're kind of seeing things whittle out little by little. I mean, we've been seeing recently, I mean, there's a couple different things that are happening. We're seeing companies other than HBO Max, soon to be Max. Yeah, is like the only newcomer currently, apart from Netflix, who is profitable, if I'm not mistaken. Marginally so, but still profitable. Disney Plus won't be profitable until next year, supposedly. Kyle is shaking his head. He's like, "That's not gonna happen. I got a fucking business degree. I'm better than Bob Iger." But yeah, so I mean, clearly they're having some pains here. But then I'm sure this is going to be exacerbated by the writer's strike, wherein the writers are looking to take their cut, so to speak, of quote unquote royalties, and that'll if that does go through, it would probably make it necessary for streamers to start sharing numbers.
And Jammer,
at least on some level,
have to issue a correction for you. Nope. HBO Max is not profitable.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, sure? I'm fairly certain. I'm looking at Variety's reports on the 2.1 billion losses in Q4, including the streaming service for HBO Max.
Including, are we sure about that?
Yeah, I'm reading the New York owner of TNT and TBS cable networks, HBO Max streaming service, and Warner Brothers production studio reported net loss 2.1 billion
really quick
for its fiscal fourth quarter.
Is that HBO Max or is that Discovery? Is that the whole company?
I guess it's Warner Brothers Discovery sees 2.1 billion loss.
I'm talking about HBO
4.
Max. I'm talking about the streaming platform.
All right.
But yeah, if you can dig into that and let me know if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, I certainly want to be correct. But I was specifically talking about Max, HBO Max. God, I'm not going to get used to that ever. Where was I going with that? Let's see here. Oh yeah. So, is this the beginning of a consolidation of Disney Plus, or do you just see it as a way for them to almost like the Disney Vault, where they're kind of cycling in and out content just so that they can have new releases to sort of throw out there every few months for people to think, "Oh, I should subscribe for this new piece of content that's hitting." Like maybe the famous Jet Jackson is finally going to get released on Disney Plus again. Who knows? I don't know. What are your thoughts? I know across the, outside of the US, it already is two branded things, but I'm just curious your thoughts.
I think they're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. Looking at some of the content that they've had over the last year at least, their Marvel stuff has been okay. Their Disney stuff has been, with the exception, I think, of Andor, it's been all right. I think they're just trying to figure out a strategy to lower their overhead as well as bring folks into the fold, right? So like at an earnings call is when we find out that they're bleeding subscribers, but they've known this, right? This isn't a mystery to them on the inside. So this is probably a new strategy that helps them deal with that.
So I want to circle back to our thing. So it looks like as of February, there was a $217 million loss on streaming. However, last week, it was announced that they expect to turn a profit in 2023. So a profit is expected this year. So they have not currently had it. Let's see here. It is an important time for Warner Bros. Discovery. We've come through major restructurings. In fact, we expect our U.S. DTC business to be profitable for 2023, a year ahead of our guidance. So that's where my misinterpretation came from. So there's the correction. Yeah, because they're just throwing stuff at a wall because this is still, if you can believe it, a decade later after Netflix really first started throwing out really quality content, we still don't have anything set in motion, any solid way for these streamers to be profitable. And it's only going to get a little bit worse once the writer's strike happened. Of course, we have renegotiations coming up for the Directors Guild. We have renegotiations coming up for SAG this year. Like, it's all kind of coming up in a perfect storm. So that they don't resolve, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They obviously want to resolve this Writers Guild situation as soon as possible. But if they give away too much, they're basically opening themselves up for more things with the Directors Guild and with SAG, and they're just going to cut more and more into their profits. So I guess this is, for me, just it's interesting to continue to see them throw stuff at the wall, but I don't know how much of it's going to stick or what they're ultimately going to run with once they're done. So
here's a question. Would Max be profitable already if they hadn't paid Zaslav $250 million?
That's a good question.
I'm just curious. I mean, considering it's $250 million.
Considering that they had a $217 million loss, the answer is yes, it would be profitable.
The answer is yes. Jesus Christ. You greedy motherfuckers. You greedy motherfuckers.
You know, the funny thing is if they just paid him, what's 250 minus 7? What's 50 minus 17? What is that? Is that 32? 33?
Yeah.
33 million. 33. So if they just paid him 33 million, it would be just breaking even. So actually, if they paid him 32 million, it would be profitable.
I don't know if he'd be able to eat on $33 million.
You're right. I just always remember, I forget when this was. I don't know who it was. But I remember when there was some basketball player and he got like his contract was like 23 or something million a year, and it was like reduced to $17 million a year. And he was like, I can't feed my family on $17 million a year. It's just like people, these fucking people.
Yeah, I find that to be fascinating. They could have already turned a profit had they not done that. And I've heard anecdotally, they could fund the writers' rooms with what they paid him.
Yeah,
the writers' rooms.
They could fund the writers if they combine, what is it, 4 of the 7 CEOs from the major studios. If they had just combined all of their yearly salaries, they'd be able to cover what they're asking.
Which is crazy because it seems like, at least with Zaslav and generally speaking, their whole goal is just to cut spending. Well, spend less on yourself.
No, the other people, they matter more, Jonesy. Yeah. They matter more. They're making the decisions that we can't. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know what the hell a day-to-day of a top executive is over there and how busy they are, but come on,
is it worth $250 million? Yeah.
I mean, is it? I don't know.
Do remember
if he's able to make it profitable a year ahead of schedule, is that worth $250 million? Maybe.
I
don't know.
No, because that $250 million is what would have made them profitable. So no.
The overall losses though were over $2 billion for Warner Discovery. So
HBO
or Warner Discovery.
No, Warner Brothers Discovery.
Yeah, for Warner Brothers Discovery, their total losses for the quarter was 2.1 billion. So yeah, sure, you could take all of it.
That was Q4 of last year, right?
Yeah. You could take, the C-suite's pay and divvy it out, but it's still not going to necessarily cover all of that.
Oh, right. It's a quarter of $250 million. Sorry, that's my bad. It's a quarter of that. Yeah. So no, Jonesy, it would not be profitable. I'm sorry to say. It's a good point.
Whatever. It's Velma's fault. Let's blame it on her.
It's funny. Velma is like the one thing that's probably performing very well based on them renewing it so fucking quickly and based on all the internet.
Did it get renewed?
Talking about it. Oh yeah, it got renewed so fast because it was really popular. I don't care. People watch the hell out of that show. Numbers don't lie. It? Probably. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch it?
No.
I watched it.
I'm so far out of being interested in anything that Mindy Kaling does.
She does some good stuff. I like the stuff that she does, or not all of it, but some of it.
She hasn't done anything good since her own TV show, and that got repetitive. And I was like, I'm done.
Oh, that show was weird, man. I remember people talking about it was weird because the main cast kept getting switched out. I think the Sex Lives of College Girls is really good so far. But we'll see where it ends up going. Then what else has she done besides that and Velma? I know she's done a lot, but I'm not sure what else.
Yeah.
Indie project.
Well, that's what he was talking about.
That is what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. But anyways, I think we've run out of things to talk about for this episode of Breaking Geek Radio, the podcast. Do you have any last lingering thoughts about the streaming wars as they stand?
As they stand? No, I got nothing.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close out. Jonesy, you can take it from here. You got your spiel.
Do I? I don't know. So if you like what you heard, do all the socials, like, rate, comment, subscribe, share. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, LRM and the Genreverse Podcast Network have other great content, but where else? On their website and on YouTube. This episode was produced by Kyle Malone, and it starred myself and Joseph Jammer Medina. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We will catch you on the next time. Hasta lasagna. Join the Discord. Let us know what you think of No. Let us know what you think of Babylon 5 or the writer's strike or David Zaslav's pay. Now you go. You speak.
Don't get any on you.